Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. And yesterday, and I do mean yesterday, and it was about 3:30, the MSI 290X Lightning come out. Now the NDA is 2 PM on the following day, 2 PM GMT, which is the, what date is it today? It's the 4th of March apparently. Now, I've worked through the night to get this little puppy done. So, essentially, the testing's done, the review's done, and now last minute, it's now midday, I'm doing the video. So we're going to be taking a look at this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you in for a closer look, and then we're going to go on and look at some technical slides. There's a lot of information about this, benchmarks, and then wrap up with a big conclusion at the end. But one thing that I can say is that make sure you go and click in on the link on the OC to go and have a look on the OC3D website, where you can see all the comparisons, the games, the benchmarks, and you can see how well this card has performed with all the other cards that we've done. Because I think you may be surprised quite how well this thing stacks up against the 780 ties, let alone the fact that it beats all of the other 290s that we've done near enough. So make sure you go and take a look, but let's move on. Okay then peeps, so a closer look around the card. We've got it on a black background for a change. We normally do it on white. This is just something I'm trying with the videos, and we're going to see how it kind of evolves over the next few times that we do it. So, the card itself. As we can see down this end, there's 2 slots, but it does hang out, so it's practically a 3-slot card. It's not 3 bolts on the back, but it is, you know, pretty much that thick. So if you're thinking about getting one of these, make sure that you've got enough room in your rig. But also, if you're thinking about buying 2 of them, then again, you need to make sure that the spacing in your system is good as well. Now, I love this white lightning bit on the side. White lightning. There's kids in parks turning around going, where? But it does light up red if you've got this power connector change. I'll show you that all in a minute. I do think it's a shame that they didn't have a white LED on it, but like I said, you will see that. You can see that this heatsink plays a huge role in the aesthetics and the side of this card. And I love the fact that they've covered up where the heat pipes are, because you pretty much do just see those lovely fins. It really does look the part. If we turn it round, you can see in at those heat pipes. But it's actually quite a simplistic design when you think about it. There is a like a heatsink plate down here to help cool the memory and the MOSFETs and everything like that, and it's throughout the card. It's a monumental bit of metal that they've got all bolted around there. So I'll show you this in a minute, but we've got a 6-pin, an 8-pin and an 8-pin, and you can just run it on the 2 8-pins if you want. This extra 6-pin is what they call the overclock mode. There are voltage checkpoints up round the back here for those hardcore overclockers out there, or those of you that just like to play around. Again, more of that kind of meatiness, but the back plate is enormous. These are LEDs that light up, by the way, but there's lots of points on this, and it's part of their design that they didn't want it to sag. And I have to admit, it's a weighty graphics card. This thing does weigh a fair bit, but it didn't sag in the rig, so they've done a very good job of it. You can see like how kind of like well engineered and everything it is. Connectors around the back, gold plated, and they're also ESD kind of electrostatic discharge rated as well, so you've not necessarily got to worry too much. But you've got a full-size DisplayPort, HDMI, and then 2 DVIs, and you can, like I said, you can see they're gold plated. It does look the part. So there's the card. It's a freaking monster, and it's actually making my arm ache holding this out in front of me. It's a little cracker, it really is. I love it. The only thing I think I should point out here is this centre bit of the card is plastic, but the rest of it around the outside is metal. So yeah, I'm really going to stop yabbering, whatever you want to call it, and we can just move on. Okay then, so a closer look at some of the details on the slides that we got from MSI. But I thought it'd be good to show you kind of some of the stuff that we get to have a look at, and it's also quite a nice visual way for me to show you the specifications and stuff about the card. So first of all, it's got memory that's over spec from AMD's kind of advisings. Now what they did do is the 290X was late. Sorry, the 290X Lightning is late, and that's because it went off for it was either a month or 6 weeks to AMG's engineers so that they could actually fine-tune and get all the memory absolutely sorted. And as you'll see later on with the overclock that I got on the memory, it stands true. It screams that they've spent a lot of time getting that perfect. The memory on this is overclocked like no other 290 or 290X I've had my hands on. So they've done an outstanding job with that, so that the time that they spent with those engineers, it shines through. Moving on to the next one, it does kind of list some overclocks. Now, ours comes in, as you can see, the R9 290X Lightning 5000 megahertz, and they do say that it can overclock up to 6400 megahertz. Well, we've got ours up to 6600 megahertz, so it just goes to show you quite how well this stuff goes. I don't know whether the memory on mine is just a particularly good sample, but it's overclocked like an absolute nutcase. Moving on to the fan control slide that they sent us. In the software, as you'll see in a little bit, we couldn't get the fan controller one side of things to work, but we're assured it's something that it's just an initial bug, and it's where we've got our sample so early. I mean, literally this turned up yesterday, and we're pushing really hard to get everything ready for the NDA, but there's no samples in retailers or anything yet. But anyway, you can control the two different sets of fans. The yellow one in the middle is PWM temperature, and the ones on the outside, one's for GPU temperature and one's for the power regulators or the power temperature. So you can fine tune those, although to be fair, I did all of my testing with those left on auto, and they were very quiet and the temperatures were awesome. Moving on, 500 watt thermal dissipation, they're saying. You can see that the card is much meatier than it was, and they've spent a lot of time sorting it out as well. There's an 8mm super pipe, or 8mm super pipe. There's two super pipes for maximum heat dissipation, nickel plated copper base, and then there's 4 other heat pipes for efficient heat transfer. I'm just reading the stuff off the page. But I can, you know, they've spent a lot of time getting that right. They have, they've left, there's less heat pipes this time, so there's actually better airflow. They really have put a lot of time and effort into this cooler, and it's not like some of the other coolers, like the DCU2s, where they just bolt the same one on every card. This has been, you know, properly custom made for the 290X Lightning. We move over to the next slide. Triple PWM controllers. You can see there's a memory PWM controller, GPU PWM controller, and there's a PLL PCIe PWM controller. The PLL PCIe is for the power that comes up through the bottom of the card through the power supply through the PCI Express slot. And then the other two are the controllers that take the power from the actual PCI Express connectors up on that far right there. There's V checkpoints on the card for all of those of you that are properly mega hardcore overclockers. I can honestly say that I don't know many people that ever use these in a normal rig, but obviously if you are going to be buying one of these to try and chase the you know, overclocking points on HWBot and stuff like that, these will be immensely useful for you. There's triple overvoltage. I will show you this in Afterburner in a little minute. There's one for the POL voltage at the bottom. It's called auxiliary voltage. There's another one for memory voltage, which is the only voltage I've actually had to change. And then there's the core voltage as well. There's you can play around to your heart's content with those. One thing I will say though is just make sure you do things in little increments and test between each one so that you can work out you know, if changing a voltage has made things unstable. Because with my card, when I was changing the power limits, touching that power limits basically made pretty much every benchmark fail. I don't know whether that's just, again, because it's an early sample or something like that, or whether it's just that it's got more than enough power already and you don't need to be throwing any more at it. The back plate, it says maximum tension and rigidness. I have to admit it's not saggy in the card at all, in the rig at all, and it can be. There's lots of mounting points on this, and considering there is a fair old amount of weight to the card, it does feel very sturdy. But as it says there, 14 screws have been used to try and make sure that it's absolutely you know, perfectly tight. But anyway, I'm going to give you a look at this in the system and everything now. And yeah, it's time for us to move on. Okay then, so this is the test rig that we're going to be using today. It's the GPU test rig, which the case is due to shortly be changed. But anyway, so I have got it wedged up at the bottom, as you can see down there, and that's just so that it's tilted back slightly because I'm only using the room lights at the moment, so that you can get a better view of the case without too many shadows. And I personally quite like the look of it. I think it just works. It's just the right amount of light at the minute. But anyway, I'm waffling, and I know I am. So, just to run through the specs, it's a Asus Vantage Extreme. We've got a 3960X, 4.6 gigahertz. There's 32 gigabyte of Corsair Vengeance Pro RAM, 2400 megahertz. Yes, it's a lot of RAM, but it's just the fact that it's 4 sticks, and they're 8 gigabyte sticks. Corsair H100 with SP120 Quiet Editions. We've got a Corsair GTX Neutron 240 gigabyte. That's got the OS and some of the benches on it. And then we've got a Force LS 240 gigabyte. That's got Steam and all the games on it. We've got the Corsair AX860i power supply. And then there's 2 AF120 whites in the front and an AF140 white in the back. The AFs that are on intake are on 12 volts, so that we've got a positive case pressure, and that's just for me personally to keep the try and keep the dust down, but it's also to make sure that there's a reasonable amount of cooling, because I know a lot of you out there aren't as freaky about silence as I am. So yeah, that's the test rig really, and I think that the lightning, even with that yellow in there, I do actually think it looks alright. Yes, it would look better if those little yellow bits were red, but I think it does look the part, and you can still kind of see what I was talking about with the underlighting as well. In fact, I think what I'm going to do, I'm just moving the camera, so don't freak. It's just so that I can get over to the other side of the room and do this, and we'll have a look. See, yeah, so you can see the kind of blue downlight in there, and also the lightning looks a lot redder. And the best thing I can say about the light on that is if you have the extra 6-pin plugged in, it will stay that colour and it won't flicker all over the place. And it drove me crackers without it. But anyway, let's move on. Okay then peeps, so there are obviously a lot of PCI Express power connectors on the back of the card, but as I've already said, you don't have to use all of them. But there's a little LED up here that changes, because essentially you can run just these 2 8-pins. This 6-pin is an extra that you can add on, and when you plug this in, it does get this light changes to yellowy type orangey sort of colour, to note that it's in overclock mode. And it's quite simple to show you, because even though the rig's not powered on, it's obviously got power in the rig. When we take this out, so it's now gone blue. So now that's in the normal stroke gaming mode. That's your average kind of use. But if you're to take another one out, or you don't deliver enough power, as you can see, it's now gone red, and it's red to state that it's not getting enough power, there's not enough connectors on there, and it's not going to work properly. And then we can do it in reverse, and we can plug them back in again. So that's 2 8s, and then if we plug the other 6 back in, there we go. We can see it's gone yellow again. Different kind of way of going about things, but it's quite visual and I like it. Okay then, on to the lighting of the card. Not the lightning, the lighting. This can change colour, but when you have the extra 6-pin in, it pretty much just stays this reddy colour. It can look a bit orange during the day, but I can assure you, last night when it was dark and I was testing this, it is actually quite a nice red. It's just the fact that there's a lot of other red in this case. It kind of takes your eyes away from it, but at night it's pretty good. So the bit that we're on this funny camera angle for, as you can see down here, we've got some kind of blue lighting. Now it was famed before for having a massive blue thing on the top, and it kind of spoiled everything, and it was never something I liked. So I'm actually quite impressed that they've taken some of these comments on the chin. Now this ends up acting like a bit of underlighting or downglow for the motherboard, so that when it's on at night it actually picks out little kind of accents on the board. Now yeah, okay, it's blue, but when it's in the rig and everything, it's not too bad, it's not too overpowering, it doesn't kind of scream the fact that it is blue, much less than the lights on the top, which I'll show you in a second, but it is actually quite a nice effect. I'm not too sure about the, you know, the yellow, the red, you know, and all the blue kind of together in this motherboard, but we can't have everything. So this is definitely a step in the right direction. I'd rather have blue down here than a bloody great blue thing on top which looks like a flying saucer's landed on it. So they've definitely gone in the right direction with this. But I'm just going to stop the camera quickly and move the case. So there's a line of LEDs up here, and these are done, you know, kind of, they flicker when it's being used, and all of these can light up when it's in game and stuff. Just in case you can hear fan noise, it's not the card, it's actually the fans that I've got in the case, because it's a test rig. So we have it set up, they're not like screaming loud fans, but it's just to make sure that we've got a reasonable amount of airflow, rather than setting it up as like a hotbox style thing. But anyway, so these are these are going to probably be a bugbear. You'll either love these or you'll hate them. I think it's a shame that they're not this orangey yellow kind of colour, or white, to be honest. The blue and the yellow, it's never been something that's gone well together. But when you consider that with the older ones, there would have been a bloody great blue ring round here, which kind of flashed and stuff as well. The fact that they've got rid of that, and we've now just got this on the card, it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I know people are going to want to show these off. It'd almost be a shame that you know, they didn't kind of change with the colour of the lightning thing. You can see as I put my hand in front of the light, you can see it change colour. It is actually, I know my camera's going to make it look orange, but there now, to my eyes, it's actually real red. I've never worked out on my camera doesn't like orange so much, but anyway, I think it's the YouTube just annihilates the crap out of it. But anyway, so yes, it does look the part. Okay then peeps, so we'll talk about the overclocking and the software to get us started. Now, everyone knows about MSI Afterburner, but if you have a look here, you can see that the fan speed is kind of blanked out, like you can't control it, and that's because you need to use the special MSI VGA fan control tool. We've seen this before in the other Lightning cards. But what I'm going to say is this is buggy at best. Now this is because the card is so new. This was very much like it when I got the 780 version previously, and they did a couple of changes. I'm not sure whether it was card BIOS or actual software changes, but then it started working again. But what I found out, if you have a look at this fan, I can't change it at the minute. There's nothing I can do with it. But I seem to have found out that if you restart it a few times, it seems to start working. Like the PWM temperature is now reading. We can now change these manually. We can turn them on auto, on and off. So restart it a couple of times and see how you get on. One thing that I can say is I have seen this PWM temperature reading 0, and I have also seen it reading like 999 degrees. So that side of it isn't exactly accurate. Weirdly, in the actual Afterburner software it is, and it is pretty good for temperatures, because you get the GPU temperature, you get the PCB temperature, you get your memory temperature, and you get the VRM temperature as well. Now sadly, with the I was talking to you then about the Afterburner, but up here look, GPU temperature, PCB temperature, memory temperature, and VRM temperature. There's a lot of other stuff below it as well. There's GPU usages, fan speed percentage, RPMs, core clocks, memory usage. Look at that list. It's a fucking mile long. The amount of things that this is monitoring is ridiculous. But anyway, back down to this. One thing that I have noticed is the two outside fans, no matter what I want to do, I can't actually set them. It won't let me. It's a bit of a weird one really, because you think that if you went in there and set it manually it'd go, but they don't change speed at all. So that's a buggy problem with the software. As you can see, that middle one keeps, you know, kind of disappearing and changing as well. So, you know, there is some issues with that. But like I said, I think that that's because it's such a new card and stuff. And I would hope that by the time you guys get this, those problems would have been fixed. But when we move on to the overclocking and stuff later on, you'll see that, you know, not being able to change this hasn't really mattered much, because the cooler is fucking awesome. And there's no, you know, nice way for me to put it. Also, as far as the overclocking is concerned, I think that there's more to be had from this in total, because I've spent quite a few hours yesterday trying to tweak and change stuff, and it actually tended to work out that the less I changed, the more I got from it. My overclock in the end, and I'll show you exactly what I did on the screen. Now, I don't normally do this. Don't forget, Silicon Lottery, if you buy one of these cards, try and work it out for yourself. Don't go using my settings and expect them to work, because yours may actually not need as many volts. Yours may need more volts and it'll be unstable. So I'm just showing you what I did and what I managed to get from it. So memory voltage, I just put that up 10. The auxiliary voltage, I put an extra 5 on that, and then we close that down. You can see you've got the little drop down tool, and you've got core voltage, memory voltage and auxiliary voltage. Power limit I didn't touch. Core clock I bumped up to 1150, and the memory clock I put up to 1650. Now, the 1150, I have had other 290Xs and 290s do 1150 on the core, but I couldn't touch the memory, you know, so it was either core or a high memory clock or a higher memory clock. With this, the fact that if I don't touch the memory, I can get this up to about 1190 on air, and it's not too bad. It's stable enough to get through games and benchmarks and stuff like that. But if we knock it down to 1150, I can do a huge up to 1650 memory clock. And basically what we'll do is, I'm just trying to remember old programs, where is it gone? Accessories, calculator. Yeah, old school. Basically you times it by 5. So if we go 1650, sorry, times 4, it gives us our effective core clock, which is 6,600. So 6,600 megahertz on the memory is nuts. It's stock at 5,000. So we've put a 1,600 megahertz overclock on that memory. And that just goes to show you that the work that they did with the AMD engineers has really kind of come through. And it sets the card apart from pretty much everything else. So they've done an absolutely cracking job there with that. The core clock megahertz, then maybe people would be expecting, oh, it's a Lightning, it should get more, but every card is still going to be limited by what I call the Silicon Lottery, and that's you're still down to how well, you know, how good the silicon is that gets put on the card. It's very difficult for a vendor to go and cherry pick GPUs, because if you cherry pick a GPU that's already on a card, and this is a custom PCB, so it is a very difficult and kind of expensive and time-consuming process as well. You can see this keeps dancing down to 0 degrees. Anyway, it is, so the fact that they've essentially done an amazing job with what they could do on the card. The fact that that memory is so high is epic. I would actually be quite happy with 1150 as a stable overclock, and it cope with things the way that it has done in our testing as well. It's been an absolute little cracker. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to show you a few benchmark scores, but don't forget, if you want to go and see all the scores and all of the comparisons and everything like that, click on the review link or go underneath in the description and click to see the full review on Overclock 3D. I have been up all night getting that sorted. So yes, going to leave you with that, and I'm now going to move on and we can have a look at some benchmarks. Okay, so Firestrike Extreme, 5,585. That's a monstrous score. It really is, and that's a monstrous score, not just for a 290X. That's a monstrous score for a 780 or a 780 Ti as well. So it's an absolute little cracker. But something that I did want to show you is if we go to the bottom right hand corner of the screen, what I also do is, as I'm running these benchmarks, I keep a note of what's been going on with GPU Z, and we can see we've obviously got the core clock at 1150, 1650 on the GPU memory clock. But if you have a look, GPU temperature only went to 64 degrees. Now I know that was only a 3D Mark Firestrike Extreme run, and it's not like half an hour long or anything like that, but this is with a huge overclock and it's only got to 64 degrees. And one of the things I can say is the rest of the fans in this rig are the noisiest thing about it. I've never heard the graphics card kick up a fuss. So the cooler on this performs exceptionally well. I've been thoroughly impressed with it. Moving on to 3D Mark Vantage X. Now Vantage is an old benchmark, but ask any of the overclockers and they will say if you can get Vantage to pass with a graphics card overclock, you're doing pretty well, because this will fall over, and when you do start benchmarking, you'll notice that Vantage is probably going to be the lowest of your actual effective overclocks. To get this to pass, it'll be lower, and you go on to 3D Mark 11 or something, and you'll notice that you may be able to actually run the benchmark with a higher overclock. So the fact that we've got this to run at 1150, 1650 megahertz, 1150 on the core and 1650 on the memory, with so little tweaks and changes, is again a testament to the overclocking ability of the card. And the fact that we got a 30,000 X score is a bit bonkers. 29,602 GPU score there. But again, I know these are all just numbers that have been thrown around. You can obviously run these on your own rig, but don't forget, if you want to go and see all the comparisons and stuff, you can go and see that on the Overclock 3D website, where we've got, you know, fucking loads of graphics cards in all the graphs and everything, so you can go and see how well this is performed compared to things like the 780 Titan 780s, 780 Ti SLI. So yeah, go and take a look. So moving on to Silla, it's a great benchmark to watch as well, and kind of the colouring kind of matches the card and everything as well. Anyway, this is the 1440p mode, because we've obviously got a 2560 by 1440 screen, and it scored 7,634, and again, that is a huge score compared to some of the other stuff that we've seen recently. I can say that the Lightning completely puts all of the other 290s and 290Xs to bed. It's fucking awesome. So a quick gaming one. This is a screenshot that we took from Tomb Raider, and it's a Tomb Raider benchmark, 2560 by 1440, everything maxed out, and we got a minimum frames per second of 48. That's a minimum frames per second at 48. The average was 63.3, and the maximum frames per second was 84. So you can see that it does perform quite well, not only in benchmarks, but you can also, this does bloody well in games anyway. But I think, you know, this has been designed to search for numbers rather than frames per second, but it does need covering. We did do a lot of other game benching on the website as well, if you want to go and have a look at that. I'm just trying to keep the, I know I do talk a lot, so I'm trying to keep the actual content that we do like this on the video down to a minimum. So yeah, time for us to move on again. Okay then peeps, so as we always do, we're going to give it an award, and then we're going to talk and, you know, kind of discuss and do a nice meaty conclusion. So right from the very get-go, an OC3D Gold Award. Now I'm going to be, you know, fairly kind of graphical about this. I'm surprised that we've given it a Gold Award. Massively surprised. Generally with these high-end kind of really expensive overclocking cards, we would generally end up giving them, if they do well, a performance award, because, you know, they're eye-watering money. But we actually think that for the amount of time and effort that MSI have spent on this, the fact that they delayed the card so that it could go and spend, what was it, like 4 or 6 weeks with A&D engineers so that they could get the Hynix memory all sorted out. there's little things like that you can see that they've spent an immense amount of time on. The fact that they've completely changed all the cooler. It's got that lovely meaty backplate. The triple overvolting. They've spent a lot of time trying to get this right. And they've put a lot of effort in as well. But generally with these overclocking cards, to get the best from them, they end up being a bit loud, to be fair, because you are overclocking them, you know, to within an inch of their lives, and the fans have to be run faster to keep everything in check. With a lot of other cards, you generally have to have the fans running a fair bit higher to be able to even get the overclock stable enough to start benching and stuff anyway. With this, I actually found it was better just to let it, you know, kind of get on with itself, you know, leave it to its own devices. And those overclocks were quiet. And the fact that the overclocks were quiet and the temperature still stayed really low shows they've put a lot of time into the cooler on that. And you've seen by the slides, you know what I mean, they've spent a lot of time polishing this and getting it right. The overclock on the core wasn't necessarily as high as I, or maybe even you, may have expected, but I do need to kind of point out with something. I have had other cards that did 1150 megahertz on the core. But those cards, if you then went and tried to overclock the memory, it became all ridiculously unstable. So when I did get 1150, it was on the core only. With this, we've got 1150 on the core, but we've also got the memory running at 1650 megahertz, which is effectively 6600 megahertz on the memory. So you put those two in the same bed together, and that's a monumental achievement. Now, another thing that you do kind of need to kind of bear in mind is everyone goes on about cherry picking. With some other brands, when they cherry pick, it's essentially like a reference design PCB, and they pretty much, they do test them to bin them. But with something like the Lightning, it's on a custom PCB that's only ever going to be on the Lightning. So if they cherry pick them, what are they meant to do with the ones that they don't think are quick enough? So it's a bit of a complicated scenario. It is a shame that you can't cherry pick the cores, but I think what they've done is pretty much, I would go as far as to say this is probably the best 290 that I've touched, because it's got lots of things for you to play with. There is a lot of, you can see that they spent, the memory, for example, it's one of those ones where they've spent an immense amount of time on this. This isn't just, you know, a custom PCB, chuck on the same kind of cooler where they've put on other cards with a different mount, and then, you know, off it goes kind of thing. Or, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's a weird one. I didn't want to like it, but it's won me over in an evening. I would also kind of go as far as to say that I think it's still a little bit buggy. It's a very, very early sample. Do you know what I mean? It literally got flown in, I think it landed at Heathrow on Saturday. It spent Sunday night in a warehouse, and then it was delivered to me on Monday morning. And I literally jumped straight on it. So it's, you know what I mean, it's not even been in the country very long yet. I don't know if the retailers have got samples. I don't think so, because this has actually come straight from MSI HQ. So I think they've probably, I think the software and stuff, like the fan control, for example, I think that's still a little bit buggy. There's something about the fact that I couldn't really touch the voltage very much as well. With my high overclocks, once I got the overclocks there, I noticed that if I was changing the voltages, the benchmarks actually started to artifact. So it's a weird one. Don't go and think that this is going to be the same for all of them. I'm just trying to give you as much information about this as possible. So to kind of put things into context, the overclock that I got was done without any power requirements being changed and without any extra voltage. I did manage to get it running 1190 without the memory overclock, but literally if I tried to get it to run 1200 megahertz, it was crashing, just opening things like Firestrike. So as soon as you like click to run, it would literally spaz out and it would black screen, and you'd have to hard reset out of it. You know, I did try, we were sat around for kind of like 3, maybe 4 hours trying little infinite kind of, you know, tiny little tweaks and changes to get to stuff to run, but we found that the best way that we could get you know, the overclock the benchmark results to go up was literally just changing that memory voltage so that we can ramp that memory voltage up and keeping the core clock down at what we would call it kind of, you know, a medium kind of to high level, rather than, you know, trying to push everything both up together. Maybe, you know, with the fans running properly, we maybe have been able to sort, you know, things out with that, but there wasn't any particular temperature issues. But so it's a bit of a kind of a weird one. We've obviously had to rush this review to try and get it out in time for NDA. We do think that, you know, maybe with a few tweaks and changes that things could actually get better. But what we're doing is we're actually rating this on the experience that we've had rather than what we might have later. So, you know, it's won the gold award on the merits that with the results that we've got, which were pretty awesome, really. I know a lot of you are probably going to end up with this with a high CPU overclock in one of the black and yellow boards, and this will end up being a gaming card. Now, with a lot of the big overclocking cards, they then become, you know, quite noisy and stuff, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with this. I also love the fact they've binned off that massive kind of the big blue MSI logo thing that they were putting on the backs of the cars, because that just made them look cheap. I still think that the blue isn't the best idea on the back, and I think they probably maybe even should have thought about using the yellow or the orange ones to trying to go with everything else, but you know, whatever. Also, if we're talking about LED colours, I actually think that lightning thing that lights up on the side, I think there should be an option for you to be able to manually set the colour of that. I say that with all the cars, like the matrices and stuff as well. And I think that, you know, there should be like a neutral button, maybe, where it just lights up white. Because, well, that would be what I'd want. But the long and short of it is, it's pretty much gone the top of our graphs across all of our game results. I think it was all but one, and we did run that a few times, and we can't work out why there's so much difference. Maybe it didn't like the high memory or something, but pretty much all but one. But also, this isn't fast in a, you know, an AMD sense. This is fast in a fuck it, you know, graphics card sense. It was trading blows with sort of 780s that had huge overclocks. It was trading blows with 780 Ti's. So if you're willing to put a little bit of time in with this, have a bit of a tweak, start playing with the memory and stuff, it's an absolute cracker of a card. I can understand why they're saying about all these world records and stuff that it's won, because, you know, 9 times out of 10 when you see stuff like that, you know that they've had it on LN2, you know that they've been sent 20 of them and they've cherry picked them and stuff. But I've got some monumental clocks out of this, and it excuse me, and it's just one that they bounced on a plane to me. And like I said, I don't particularly think that the core clock was particularly high, but the memory just went on and on and on and on and on. And I think if I was brave enough to just start, right, fuck it, we're going to cover this thing in fans, we're going to start really raging the memory volts and stuff, I reckon I probably could have pushed it that little bit further. But it's one of those ones I don't particularly want to have to turn around to MSI after I've had it 24 hours and go, yeah, I've got some wicked scores, but I've also killed it. So I do still have to err on, you know, the side of caution a bit. But the long and short of it is, it's a brilliant card. I love the cooler. I think that's the one thing with me, is because I never thought that we would get a cool and quiet 290X together. We've generally either had cool ones, which have been a bit noisy, or we've had quiet ones where the temperatures have been all right, but not, you know, particularly brilliant. This has kind of bundled it all in together, as well as dumping a huge overclock on the top. But I can see that I've been yabbering on for a bloody long time, but long and short of it is, congratulations MSI, you have literally just bagged the first kind of, it's epic. It's probably, no, I'm going to say it, the best 290X on the planet at the moment. It's just a shame that you can't get it in different colours, really, isn't it? And you've just got to have that bit of yellow in it. But luckily, there's not a lot of not a lot of yellow on there. But anyway, I've not had a lot of sleep. I've had a lot of coffee to try and get this review done. I'm going to have another one because I've got to render this bloody thing yet to make sure that we're all on song for 2 o'clock. But this is Tiny Tom Logan. That's actually quite cheery mood because he's been up all night working on a graphics card review. Out.